JKB back with another episode, and today on the show I'm reviewing Kingdoms of Amalur. God, I can't say that. Re-Reckoning. Thank you to the publisher for the review copy, which was THQ Nordic. The game was released in 2012, and this is considered to be a remaster of the original. Well, at the beginning here, I could just say it doesn't do much in terms of visuals. This is an action RPG that did come out around the same time as Skyrim, and some people may argue the combat in this is much better than Skyrim. The first thing to impress me with the game was the score. Right off the title screen, I knew that they had spent a lot of money developing a score that would stand out from other action RPGs at the time, and even compete with games like Skyrim in terms of the musical selection. As for the story of the game, it's important to point out that this was actually an MMO originally, and then they decided to switch development to make it a single-player game, so a lot of the stories in the game are told in an MMO fashion, where you will find a character on the roadside and he'll start telling you a story and he'll fill in some lore about the story, and it really pushes the main story forward in an MMO way. And overall, in terms of the story, over 100 hours of side quests and main story equal to something I consider to be better than Skyrim in terms of its story. The first thing you'll do in the game is create your character. You'll be able to select from a wide variety of options on the face and hair and all of those types of things that you get of classic RPGs, and I call it classic now because yeah, it is 10 years old and it shows its age in certain ways, which I'll get into in a little bit, but overall the character creation is pretty good. Next up, you're going to choose your character type. You've got the mage, which is obviously a lot of magic and spells that you can cast from a distance. Then you have a rogue type character who is able to attack with a little bit more sneakiness and much quicker than the next one, which is the knight, and that's more of a classic RPG archetype. Of course, along the way you'll be leveling up these characters and having skill trees, but one of the cool parts about this game is you can actually respec your points at any point in time. So if you want to be a mage but kind of feel like a knight, you're able to do that at any point in the game. Really, you can just go into the menu and respec your skill points, which is a huge bonus to this game because it really ties into the combat, which I'm going to get into in a second. But I definitely don't want to undersell how much you can do in this game in terms of the skill trees. If you really want to go nuts with this, you can spend hours on hours just trying to figure out exactly what type of character you want to play as, and I feel like that's a huge bonus and something that is amazing in this game, but we'll get into something that is kind of negative that has to do with the menu systems themselves. As for combat, this is the strongest point of the game. You've got two attack buttons where you can assign different weapons, so you can have a sword in one hand and have some daggers that attack with a fiercer speed in the other. You also have the ability to shoot a bow and arrow. However, it's not first-person mode like Skyrim. You just kind of aim at the enemies and hit a button. You'll shoot from a distance and be able to hit them without an issue. So some people might say that's a bit silly, but I look at it as more of an RPG arcade mechanic. As for the combo system, you'll be able to string cool combos together by using your magic and switching out the abilities that you're able to do with your magic while swinging a sword or pulling out a dagger or even shooting your arrows. And you can also hold long some of the buttons, which will give you more of a powerful attack. Overall, the combat is a blast in this game. I can't believe how much fun it is, and that's what really is going to push you forward through the 100 plus hours of this story. I should also point out that the enemies in the game have a variety of mechanics that they can pull off, such as, shooting webs at you if they're spiders, or charging you and attacking you from a distance with projectiles. All of that is in this game, and one of the cool parts about the design of it is that Todd McFarlane himself actually, I believe, did some of the design on the enemies, so you're going to see some really cool looking enemies in this game. The only issue I could say about combat is that while the boss battles are a lot of fun as well, because of course you're doing a lot more attacking in them and there's a bit more of a strategy and a pattern that you have to pay attention to, I think the main issue is the game can be a little easy at times in terms of its combat, and I think that plays into the fact that yeah, it used to be an MMO, and then was turned into a single-player game. So I think originally you might have been doing this with obviously more people in mind. And yeah, it is a bit of a repetitive thing. The combat is just hit a button, hit a button, hit a button, attack, attack, attack. There's not too much strategy involved in terms of moving out of the way and dodging, while you do have a dodge maneuver. It just feels simple, but it's so rewarding. And that's the thing I wanted to get across here. That's why you play this game. This combat is amazing, and it's so much fun. It reminds me of playing the classic God of War games. As for the world itself, it is not an open world game in the sense of Skyrim. This is more of, like I said before, an MMO design. So this means that you are sort of loading into different sections of a giant overall map. While most of it is kind of like a road going from point A to point B, some of the paths will break off and you'll be able to go look for a little bit of an adventure over here or to the left down another road. So overall, in terms of its world design, you're going to notice it's kind of like pathways, like walking through villages and getting out of the village and then going to a tree forest setting where you've got to go from point A to point B. There's not too much exploring. However, there are definitely secrets in the environment, but it's not on Skyrim's level in terms of an open world. So just know that you will be doing a lot of loading in between these sections of the map as well. The one thing I do want to say is a bit of a negative in the game as well is the audio design is still set from 10 years ago. There's no directional audio, meaning that if you shoot a bow and arrow or something whizzes by your ear and you move the camera, it's not really panning with that movement. So that's a bit of a disappointment. It makes the audio overall flat. The voice acting, I will say, is much better than Skyrim, so that is a bonus. You do have a lot of scenes where you're just listening to dialogue, making choices on screen. Very clunky, but this is most of the game, so you got to get over that to be able to play this game. I was kind of hoping that they would update the dialogue system in the game, but they just didn't do it. So you're getting that classic UI with choices that really don't amount to anything. But it's not a huge problem with the game, I just wanted to bring it up. The biggest disappointment with the game is the UI system. It's not streamlined, meaning you have to go through the horrible UI system to select different weapons and gear. Now you can close down, sections of that UI, but it's still clunky as hell. I wish they had fixed it. It's very difficult to see, like, what did I just pick up? What can I do with these stats? And where do they really apply to my character? After a couple of hours into the game, you realize I have so much gear, this is ridiculous. So I'm very disappointed with the menu system. Well, yeah, it's 10 years old now, they should have updated it. As for the performance on the Nintendo Switch, coming in at $29 in the US and $39.99 in Canada, you're getting a game that literally is about 100 hours, depending if you want to do the DLC side quests as well, which add about another 5 to 15 hours. This game is a juggernaut in terms of just experience. You're going to be experiencing so many different little locations in the game, but I have to say it never amounts to being something as epic as Skyrim because you're kind of locked down into those pathway sections, but the story, the lore, the world building, all much better in this game over Skyrim. The performance on the Nintendo Switch is great as well. There's nothing really negative to report in that department. It runs as it should. Overall, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. The story is much better than Skyrim in my own opinion. The combat is also much better than Skyrim in my opinion. If you're into an action RPG arcade type of game, you're going to have a blast with this. It's basically a must-own on the Nintendo Switch. To be able to take this on the go, yeah, well, it's like 10 years old, like I said, so it's not going to really put any pressure on the Nintendo Switch in terms of visuals. It's amazing just to pick up and play because, again, I keep saying it, it was an MMO, and now it's a single-player game, so you're getting those little sections at a time, so it's perfect for the Nintendo Switch just to take in bed, go through a dungeon, do some dungeon crawling, or go onto a side quest, get some more of the lore. This game is amazing. I love it. The reason I'm not giving it a higher score is because the UI is a disaster and the audio is very old now. And I feel like, yeah, update it, man. Like, Let's get this franchise going. This was supposed to be a bit of a trilogy from my understanding, and I'm kind of disappointed we're not getting anything more out of this trilogy. The only upside I can say is that EA used to own this title, and now they don't, so thank goodness for that. If you enjoyed this review, please consider subscribing to my channel. It helps me eat dinners, and I'll see you in the next episode of JKB.